and there's an interview process that honestly, I look more at the parents than I do at the junior. Almost always the junior is a reflection of what the parents do. So attitudes towards like the parents, when I interview them and I talk to them, and usually that interview process isn't necessarily a formal like this. It's sometimes it's the first couple of lessons, and where I don't actually, they may have interest. They'll say, hey, we want to join your elite program. And I'll say, sure, let's set up a lesson first. Let's see how the fit is. I'm almost always looking at the parent. I will tell you, I don't work with parents that are not a good fit. And that sounds really harsh. It's just, you and I both have seen it where such a difficult relationship. And I feel like my time is finite. I want to help kids as much as I can. If the parent's a hurdle that I don't have the time to truly break all that down, I'm going to say, hey, maybe just don't have time, and give them a referral elsewhere. But to give you an idea, though, the things that parents could be doing is, I would say, if you have to look at your relationship, and I forget who told me this once upon a time, it's you have to look at your relationship kind of in this like a NASCAR team. Little student is the driver. We, the golf coach, and the whole team are the mechanics. Parents are, for lack of a better word, the financiers. They are the people who they're there to support, hooray, make things available, get them from A to B, and just make sure that they have the access to. That is their main job. Some parents want to be more active in that, and some parents have their own thing, and it's all super well intentioned. And I know I'm not the first person to probably come on your show and even say that. It's always well intentioned.
Right.
But that's a dynamic that's extremely difficult to work with. What a great question, by the way. But to any parents listening, I would certainly say, and you've actually had a couple of people in the recruiting world that you've had on your podcast. I'm sure you probably have talked on this, and at least I know you're aware of it. To the parents listening, it's, if you're a person who's overbearing and you're too involved in your child's productivity, college recruits see that too. I hear college recruits all the time saying the biggest red flag. I had Kim Lewan from Wake Forest. I had a chance to get to watch her speak, and the first thing she said is, does the child like set up their bag and get their bag out of the car? They're looking in the parking lot to see, is it mom and dad for a teenager setting up everything and putting sunscreen on their child still, making sure they know where to go? Is it still those things? Like, they're looking for a child to have that independence and to be able to say that they are not codependent on their parent so much being around. So parents, let your kids do what they need to do.
Yes, I was giggling because I've seen some quite older children, possibly later in high school, with parents putting sunscreen on, and some other kind of strange things that I thought, or I observed for older teenagers with their parents.
Yep.
But no, I think that's great advice. And the goal is not to attack the parents. The goal is to create opportunities to be like, hey, this is some great advice from other coaches. I mean, I've had numerous coaches from different parts of the country talking on this topic to better help the parents. The goal is to help you and your child
Yep.
develop and reach their highest potential. And it might not always be focusing on the technique. Like, you've got to look at these other aspects because the coaches are absolutely looking, like you said, as in the parking lot, the phone conversations, the first lesson. So it's just making sure. So if they kind of have questions, like if you were gonna give advice in terms of like, hey, I'm a parent and I'm not quite sure if I am producing any of these red flags, like what are certain things they could look out for?
I mean, self-assessment's such a hard thing to do. If you have a coach that's willing to give you that feedback, you can always ask for feedback. Hey, coach, what can I do better? You know, and offering for um, very critical, constructively critical feedback, and letting, that cone of honesty. Right now the big trend right now is we listen and we don't judge. You got to have that opportunity to allow yourself to be vulnerable and allow to take that and to truly listen and not be defensive, which once again, I could see very easily the defensiveness being such a quick knee jerk reaction when it's you've only wanted to love your own child. I can't fault anybody.
Yeah.
But no, I would say that's a big deal. And same thing goes for asking, junior. It's when they ask you for things, hey mom, can you do X, Y, and Z? The question I would be asking is, all right, if I do this, is this a good pattern for me supporting them? Or am I, for lack of a better word, am I coddling them? Am I being too involved and letting them have their own ownership and independence of something? Those would be two good questions to kind of look at and ask, I think.
Yeah, and any advice you could have for coaches too, because that's a tough conversation to sometimes have with a parent if they are not a good fit. And I know for myself, like going back, years back, I was the kind of coach, more of a people pleaser. Like I was trying to figure out, like I was trying to keep everybody and coach them and not trying to find the right fit because you don't want to lose the client or that
Yep.
relationship. And sometimes that is more detrimental than it is positive to keep people around if they're not a good fit. So I've had to learn that the hard way and learn through experience. But for younger coaches out there, I mean, that is a skill that you want to learn and develop, especially as you start trying to kind of grow your business and just really become a strong, not just a teacher, but a coach, is learning how to deal with those tough conversations and
Yep.
confrontations when they do come up.
That's a very tough one. And like I said, that's why I, on the front end, once again, and when I qualify potential students to join my elite program, it's very measured. And once again, it's very much how am I going to interact with parents? And one of the big key details, it's not just how polite somebody is. It's not just that, it's how I would perceive if I had to tell mom and dad, hey, we need to change a behavior. A part of that is, would they be receptive to it? One, and then two is uh, when they can understand that difference of, anything that they are doing, it's how they perceive their role in their child's life, in their journey in competitive golf. Once again, it's if I see somebody, once again, way too competitive, like if the first thing and I'm like, okay, new student comes in, and by the way, for all the parents listening, if I want a quick insight as to who's too involved and who's not too involved, if I pick up the phone call, and the first person I'm going to usually have the conversation with is the parent. It's usually not the junior calling me saying, hey, I'd like a golf lesson. It's parent. When I hear, hey, I want a golf lesson for my child, he struggles with X, Y, and Z, and I'm hearing them go through all the list of all their details and all their perceived thoughts, I'm going, that's a person who's probably a little involved, a little more involved. But when I hear it in the other way of, hey, my child feels like he needs help and I just want to pair him with somebody who can give him the help, that's a green flag for me. That's a green, I want to have more conversation immediately with that family. So once again, one of those little ideas of one is a parent who
Yeah.
looks at this very transactional and says, oh, I need to get this fixed for my child. And one is,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get help for my child.
Yeah.
Different.
Like you said, it's a green flag when the kid can kid, junior, high school or whatever age they are can start speaking for themselves. Like they understand and know their game. And when they're able to have that conversation with the coach, then you see them as okay, like they want to take ownership of this process. And I think that is the biggest thing, is to determine who is owning this process. Is it mom, dad, or is it the junior?
Yeah.
And so the more you can teach and prepare the junior to understand and own more of their process, and at the same time, it's hard for parents who want to have that control over the process to kind of learn how to step
Yep.
back. But I think if you have a great coach and a great team around you, you start teaching and training those parents in a positive way, like, hey, like your son or daughter is ready for this, but like this is what the next phase and step kind of looks like for you. You're going to be supportive, but this is what your support looks like versus this. It's being excited for them, at the tournament, that they're there, just supporting them through the ups and downs, like being the shoulder they can lean on when times get tough, or, being the big hug at the end after they have a great tournament versus, them on the practice tee with the phone videoing, telling them, hey, make sure you check this, do that, do that. And it's just like you said, that's the mechanics role, and that's us as the golf coaches versus, they're just supposed to be there on the sidelines just supporting and cheering. And so I think the more we can, as coaches, have that conversation and teach them how to do that, then they can understand it better. And I think part of what is the challenge is for these kids and parents, it's their first kid. It's their first one going through this process. So they've
Uh-huh.
never known how to do this. So the parents need as much coaching as the juniors do.
Yeah. Well, I will say this to anybody listening, with as big as my career in teaching has been, I have a wife who does not play golf and at the moment doesn't show a lot of interest in playing. If she ever wanted to learn, you ever think, well, you live with a golf coach who has had some success. You've got a pretty good thing. I would not teach my own wife. Love my wife to death. I wouldn't do all the things in the world for that woman. Like, truly the light of my life. Will not teach her
Yeah.
because of that dynamic is such a hard one to manage when you start managing that whole idea. And same thing goes for the parents. Is it's nice when you have somebody to do that for you and have the impartialness so that you can still be the family dynamic. That's the most important part.